ज्ञानशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मीलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। ॐ प्रपन्नपारिजाताय तोत्रवेत्रैकपाणये ज्ञानमुद्राय कृष्णाय गीतामृतदुहे नमः। Sisters and brothers, a very loving Om Namo Narayana to each one of you. In the Bhagavad Gita, in the second chapter, which is called Karma Yoga, we find Sri Krishna saying to Arjuna that he should make all his actions yajna. Now, yajna, as we understand it, is sacrifice. And when we talk sacrifice usually in South Africa, it is either havan or chickens and goats. And on the topic of goats, I was born on a farm, and we only left the farm for Durban when I was 10 years old. So as long as we were on the farm, I never heard about birds or animals being slaughtered as offerings. And when we came to Durban, of course, I heard that chickens were being taken to Isabingo and all that kind of stuff. And then I started to hear about goat prayers. And I wondered, how is it that people pray to goats? And I thought perhaps they trained for goats. And then I reasoned it couldn't be possible because I'm now living in a suburb. It's no more a farm. There's no need for a whole flock of goats. Realized later that it was the goats that were praying for the dear lives. So, what is the meaning of sacrifice? According to any English dictionary, we will be told that it is giving up or giving away something which is dear, close, important, valuable to oneself. But in the Gita, that is not the only thing. What is required is that this giving away be done selflessly. You see, many of us can sacrifice, so-called sacrifice, but with a motive. Even parents, they sacrifice a great deal for their children. They send them to school and college and so forth and so on. But they have a motive, and that is when these children grow up, they will look after us. But that doesn't happen anymore. And the parents are thrown away to the curb or placed in some old age home. So, what really is sacrifice? You see, in human life, there are stages, or should I say, categories of activity. The first one is competition, where we compete with each other for something. And in competing with each other, we're no different from animals, because it is in the animal kingdom that we find the survival of the fittest. So in this state of competition, we are actually behaving at a physical level. We are only concerned with the body and what we can get for it. So perhaps by some grace or by some effort, one rises above that and goes into the next stage, which is cooperation, where people get together and in a group they cooperate to achieve some aim. And invariably, as we know in corporates, The aim is profit. And even in organizations, other than spiritual organizations, the aim is for name and fame. So it can be written in some paper that such and such an organization did such and such great work. And in that way, those who are in that corporate situation gain for themselves a certain amount of fame. Then rising from that, we come to the next stage, which is commitment to self-dedication, where one gives of oneself without expecting anything in return. That is self-dedication, commitment to that. And that is what is required of us. And that is what is required of us by Sri Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita. And he says that this sacrifice is as old as what we know as creation. I say what we know as creation because actually there's no such thing as creation. There is manifestation, there is projection, but no creation. Because for creation to take place, you have to have instruments or machines as well as raw goods outside oneself. But in the case of this cosmos, that did not happen. All came from Brahman itself. So that is why I do not use the term creation very loosely. So in the Bhagavad Gita, Shri Krishna says that when Prajapati, that is Brahma, manifested this multiverse, because that is a new term, there's no more universe, we're now discovering more and more universes. So when Brahma manifested this multiverse, with it he also produced yajna, or sacrifice. And he said, let this be your cow of plenty, your Kamaduk. Kamaduk is a Puranic story in which the cow, the wish-fulfilling cow, came out of the churning of the ocean. So here we find that this is like a handbook which was given to mankind or humankind right in the beginning, that you shall sacrifice for each other. And in this way, you will prosper, he says. There's a prayer, which is in your prayer book as well. Shivamastu sarva jagatam parahita nirgata bhavantu bhutagana dosha prayantu shantim sarvatra sukhi bhavatu loke. Let there be auspiciousness in the whole world. Let each one engage in doing good to others. Let vice subside and virtue rise, and may there be peace all over. So, this is what is required, that all our activities should be in the form of yajna, or sacrifice. In other words, they should all be totally selfless. So, Krishna goes on to explain how this can be put into practice. And he says that by cherishing the devas, the gods, they in turn will cherish us. In other words, by paying respect to the gods, by acknowledging the greatness of God. How? By serving each one, as I had just pointed out in the prayer. So by doing that only will we all prosper. So what happens then if we don't do that? Krishna says that those who do that are verily thieves, because we're taking advantage of other people but doing nothing in turn. You see, presently in South Africa, there's a big, well, from the beginning of the new era, there was this big hoo-ha about Ubuntu. And Ubuntu is just that, actually. It is sacrifice. Ubuntu says, I am what I am because of others. But unfortunately, people have misunderstood that. And they believe that I am what I am because of others, therefore others have to do good to me, I don't have to do anything to them, or any good to them. And that is basically the problem in South Africa presently. So, one has to engage in this selfless activity, selfless sacrifice on a regular basis. So, what happens? Is there any gain to the person who does it? Is there any loss if you don't do it? And Shri Krishna says that those who perform this yajna, they are free from sin, while those who do not perform this yajna are actually eating sin. So we have to consider that. How is it that we do this so that we do not eat sin? You know, in the Mahabharata, we find that Karna was a great sacrificer. He would give away anything. Even in war, he gave away his armor and his armaments, and was at one point even standing there without any armament. But the one thing he didn't do was give food to anyone. Okay, and then the Puranic story says that when he went to heaven, he was sent back because he did not do that. And therefore he came back down, and during that period, which we know as Pitrapaksh, for 2 weeks, he had to feed those around him. So we have to make it a point of performing this yajna. And in Hinduism, there is what is known as the obligatory duties, the activities that you continue on a regular basis, not only once in a year, but on a regular basis. And these are as follows. The first one is yajna to the gods, or Deva Yajna. In Deva Yajna, one prays firstly to God, but more importantly and simply, one has to give thanks to God. Do we do that? When we get up in the morning, do we thank God that we are alive? We go to bed at night hoping that we'll get up the next morning alive. But when we do that, do we give thanks for that? Do we give thanks for the rains? Because in this very chapter, Krishna says that from rains we get food, and from food we ourselves grow. Do we give thanks for that? We take everything for granted, but regular prayer is important. And how is it a sacrifice? It is because you set aside a certain amount of time to do that. We make the time. Many people say, I can't find time. No one is asking you to find time. We're asking you to make time, which is a big difference. So firstly, there is a Deva Yajna, Then there is a Rishi Yajna, where we give thanks and we acknowledge the Rishis, because it is through their sacrifice that we have received these scriptures. Can you imagine the great sacrifice that Vedavyas made? He had to collect all these little bits and pieces and codify them to say, these here will fit into what I will call the Rig Veda, and these will fit into the Sama Veda, etc. That was great sacrifice on his part. And then he didn't stop there. He went on to produce the Puranas, all 18 of them, and some of them are voluminous. And of course, he also produced the Brahma Sutras. All that he has done. So, shouldn't we acknowledge that? Shouldn't we make use of that knowledge? So in Rishi Yajna then, what is needed is a study of the scripture, not the entire scripture, at least one sloka per day. So we read, try to understand, we think about it, and if possible, we put it into daily operation. Then comes Pitra Yajna. Pitra are not only the departed parents, they are also the living parents. And we find nowadays that young people are showing total disrespect to their parents. Total absence of love, where they go and dump them in some old age home. Some of them visit them now and then, but others don't even do that. And yet they will do Pitra Puja when it comes to Pitra Paksh. So of what use is that? If you cannot look after your parents while they are living, so parents have to be respected. Of course, the scripture says, Matri Devo Bhava, Pitri Devo Bhava. Look upon your mother as God, look upon your father as God. But do we do that? Then is Nara Yajna. Nara is ourselves, beings, human beings, service of human beings. How? By providing them with food and clothing, and even education. Education doesn't necessarily mean that you have to have a degree. Education may involve exchanging ideas with somebody, or informing somebody of something that you have learned at this ashram, something of that sort. That is also education. But do we do that again? Once we're out of the gate, everything is forgotten most often. Then there is Bhuta Yajna. Bhuta, that to be taken care of. How? By giving them food and water. So certain people have these bird feeders and things like that. So that is good, as long as it is done selflessly. So these are the yajnas that we are obliged to perform on a daily basis, for which we have to make time. Of course, we can't do that. So at least for that one fortnight, which is called Pitra Paksh, we can do that. Because when you're actually doing the Pitra Puja, that is what happens, okay? We are make offerings to the gods, to the rishis, to the Brahmins, and of course, there's food that is taken out and placed under some tree, and that is for the creatures, that is Bhuta Yajna. But we take out piles of food out there. While there are human beings that are hungry and suffering here, we take out piles of food and leave it under a tree, and the birds and other creatures only eat a few ounces of that. So that can't be considered to be sacrifice. So, as I said, this sacrifice, daily sacrifice, is important because in the scripture, in the Bhagavad Gita, Sri Krishna says that from food, all beings come into existence. This body that we are so proud about is actually known as the Annamaya Kosha, the food sheet, because it exists on account of food. So if there's no food, how is it going to exist? And for food to come into existence, there has to be rain. Without rain, as you know, there will be no food production. And for there to be rain, there has to be sacrifice, according to Sri Krishna. By performing this sacrifice, as I said, the gods are happy and they let down rain in the right quantity, not as a deluge or as a sprinkle, but in the right quantity so that we could eat and grow. And of course, sacrifice, according to Sri Krishna, is born of karma. By activity only can sacrifice be done. Without activity, there is no such thing as sacrifice. You can't be sitting down quietly and performing sacrifice. There has to be action. And in turn, this action is born of the Veda. Because in the Veda, all these injunctions are given as to what to do, how to do it, and so forth and so on. So in as much as when a manufacturer puts out some product, with it he puts a handbook. This is what you do, this is what you should not do. So also, right in the beginning, as I said, when we were put on earth, with us came these injunctions as to how to conduct ourselves. Now we've heard that we come into the world with closed fists and we leave with closed fists as well. So in between then, obviously, we should open our fists. We should open up our hands because it is in giving that you receive. As long as your hand is not open, in giving you cannot receive. So this is the importance of sacrifice. And this is what we should be doing on a regular basis, as I said. So important is sacrifice that at one point a king actually got down to put his hand to the plow. And that king is mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita. That king is Janaka. But what do we find in organizations, for example? There are certain kings that are walking around. They will only walk around with their hands in the pockets or crossed in front of them and not do a stitch of work, but complain about how lazy the other people are. Each one has to put in his effort in order for any organization to grow, whether it is business, spiritual or other. And that can only be born of sacrifice. It is my prayer that each one of us engages in some sort of sacrifice for the good of the world. Om Shri Ram Krishna Arpanamastu.